So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto fall in love with Princess of Motorcity. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Field of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. I can't believe it all turned out this way, a woman said in the rain as her black hair flowing with red and silver streaks was matted down as she wore her black Anbu-styled pants with a dark blue turtleneck sweater with the left sleeve missing and a black trench coat with gray flames licking the bottom. Her sclera were black while her eyes were snow white in color. Feeling a hand on her shoulder, she turned to see a blonde-haired man with soulless blue eyes wearing the standard Junin attire of Konoha, with a white version of her trench coat with red flames as the kanji for Yondaime Hokage was emblazoned on the back. I know you didn't want this, Masumi, but it was safe to assume that none of us here didn't imagine this outcome, the blonde-haired man said, getting a nod from the three other men next to her. He's right, Naruto-chan, but all we can do is move forward, an elderly man wearing what looked like a black jumpsuit and an old samurai helm on his head said, patting the tall woman on the shoulder as 10 long tails swept back and forth. Gigi, I'm not sure if you're seeing what I am, so let me point it out for you, she said, walking forward till she was several feet away before turning. What the hell is there to look forward to? My wives are dead. My friends are dead. Everyone I've held dear to my heart are gone, and I can't join them because I fucked up on Handsign, making me the new Juubi. So tell me, what is there to look forward to? She roared before falling to her knees in tears. Hina-heim, Hubby-heim, Su-chan, Ino-chan, they're all gone, she said as the old man patted her on the shoulder as she looked up to receive a slap across her whiskered face, waking her go wide-eyed. You're 16 fucking years old and a cage, Naruto Uzumaki, fucking act like it, the sandame said, sobering the teenage girl up as she nodded. Yeah, okay Gigi, but I've presented my point. What is there to look forward to? All life, plant and living, are no longer around, so what am I going to do? I mean, not even you four are going to remain amongst the living soon, she said, seeing their bodies starting to flake away. Naruto, what do you remember me telling you about there being multiple universes? The elderly Kage said, forming several hand signs with his two predecessors while her father was writing several seal tags from the wood formed by the Shodem Hokage. I know what you told me about it, but I thought that you just hit your pipe a little too hard that day, she said, getting a snort from her father and the second Hokage. Ignoring the remark, we're going to use a series of space-time ninjutsu to send you to another universe while your father works on a seal to regress your age to an infant, locking away your memories of this world until you hit a certain age, although your mind will already know full well how to use chakra and to access it, he said, getting wide eyes from the girl he saw as a granddaughter before she blacked out. As he caught her, he said, Minato, how are those seals coming? I just finished it. All we gotta do is place them on her and the note to the family who'll find her, he said as he used the same paper from the tree Hashirama made as he used his chakra to write out a note. Sensei, the gate? He asked as the white-haired male said. We're almost finished, but we'll have no idea where she'll be sent to when she gets there. She could end up floating in an ocean to some Kami forsaken place, he said, getting a nod, silently praying she'll end up in a nice place. I already had my clones grab everything of value here in the villages, from the forbidden scrolls to her family scrolls, to learn from, and clothes for her, the sandame said, placing them on a seal in her arm after they placed the seal to regress her age as she was returned to an infant. Her father wrapped her up in her cloak along with her weapons as he slipped the note he wrote while kissing her on the forehead. Naruto, I know your mom already told you this already, but be a good girl. Eat healthy, don't stay up too late. Listen to whoever takes care of you, and if you're anything like me, then your biggest concern is women. I only had Kushiheim, so I'm practically clueless on this subject, but don't fall for the first woman you meet. If you had to fall for someone, let it be some girl who can keep you grounded and know your mom and I have always loved you. The portals open, Minato, toss her in, the first said as he started to fall apart along with his brother and Sarutobi. All right, the Yondaime said, gently tossing the sole living survivor of the Fourth Great Ninja War as the portal closed, granting the four Kage their time to leave the world. Motorcity, Detroit. I hate it, a red-headed woman said, sitting up in her bed with her husband, who looked at her with sad eyes as he sat up with his two-tone blonde, brown hair coming over his shoulders. Looking at her, she was looking out the window of their bedroom in Motorcity as the rain came down. Hate what, baby? I hate my deep voice, Duke. she said with a slightly deeper alto than a normal woman with her back turned. I hate my big feet, my still visible Adam's apple. I absolutely despise the fact I have to shave every morning, she continued as he brought himself closer to her. I hate that no matter what I do with my body I'll always be disgusted with what's between my legs, she said as tears started to fall as he placed his hands on her shoulders. Babs baby, listen to me, he said as she lowered her head. But the thing I hate the most is that I'll never be able to have our child, she cried as he wrapped his arms around her waist, bringing her closer to him. Babs, look at me, no matter what it takes I'll make this up to you, sweetie. You can count on it, he said, whipping her tears when a loud bang came, shocking the two of them when one of the guards in their home came into their room. Sir, there seems to be something by the front door that I think would require both of your attention, he said, averting his gaze as they grabbed some robes as they followed him outside the home as they came to see a crying bundle as Babs ran up to the infant as she cradled the crying bundle in her arms. Ah, who would leave this adorable little thing out here in the rain? She raged, still coming down from her emotional moment as she combed her fingers through the child's multicolored curls when she brushed her hand against something furry as the child purred, getting an adorable coo from the woman when they sat in the kitchen. Hey Babs, you said you studied Japanese before the world went to hell, right? Duke asked, getting a nod, still cradling the child as he handed her the note that was peeking in the coat she was wrapped in. It seems to be some traditional Japanese writing and some of the kanji seem to be unrecognizable, but I can still translate, she said before asking the female guard, who like all the other male and females in the home were dressed as veils. And Sarah, would you be a dear and make some baby formula for this adorable little girl? She asked, getting a nod as she went around the kitchen. Let's see, it says here, she started before reading. Hello to anyone who reads this. Firstly, I would love to thank you for finding my little Naruto, to whom this may concern. My wife and I weren't well and was already close to dying when Naruto was born. Her mother had already passed and is waiting for me to join her soon, but all I can ask is give her what her mother and I cannot. The jacket you found her bundled in is the first and last gift her mother and I can give her. She read the first part as the grown man had started feeding her, as he was also given some diapers as he started to change her and noticed two things. One, he was like his wife, and second, she had what appeared to be 10 foxtails. What is this? He exclaimed as his wife looked over to see what had him shocked. Eating. You may have noticed, but like my wife, my daughter is a hermaphrodite with both functional male and female genitalia. And as for the wolf ears and tails where were from, there were 9 powerful demons that was intent on causing mass destruction. To prevent this I sealed them into my daughter, before you cast judgment or think she is the demon herself. She isn't, for even as a newborn her will overcame that of the demon, making her a demon, but made her the new 10 tails, in a mark on my daughter where she will show you when she's older, containing the information of where we were from. I ask you, whoever you are, please raise my little girl as if she were your own daughter. Please give her what Kushina and I are unable to give. Signed, Minato Namikaze Senju and Kushina Uzumaki Uchiha, mother and father of Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju. Attached was a young red-haired woman whose stomach was swollen with her being wrapped up in the arms of the man who wrote the letter, wearing a white and red version of her cloak. What do you think, honey? She asked, handing her husband the photo as he looked at the happy couple as he shifted his attention to the sight that steeled his choice, with his wife's eyes holding so much joy as she cooed to the baby as she rubbed her whisker marks. I say we keep her, he said, making her shift her attention to her husband as her eyes were alit with hope. Really? She asked, getting a nod from the man, making her hop in his lap, kissing him. Besides, if I'm the Duke and you're the Duchess, then it's only natural we need a princess, he said, brushing his hand through his new daughter's scalp, getting a deep purr. Oh, thank you, sweetie, she said, kissing him again, which he returned as the woman returned with some on-hand baby formula as she began to feed her, which to their surprise she drained the bottle in a matter of moments. Here you go, Babs. I must ask, whose child is that? She asked, getting a smile from the redhead. She's my daughter, my little Naruto, she said, kissing the tailed child on the forehead, causing the little girl to open her eyes, revealing black sclera with snow-white eyes as she giggled, reaching for the woman as she brought her finger close as the child's clawed hand firmly grasped it. Shall I go inform the others about this? Sarah asked, getting a shake of the head, saying. No, we can tell them all in the morning, but for now I think it's time we all go back to bed. Question, what day was she born anyway? Duke asked, making the two women look at the calendar. We could do today, it's October 10th, Babs said, holding her daughter close to her chest. Welcome to the world, Naruto. N.S. Devlin, she said, getting a question mark from the two other adults. N.S. If you're coming up with an acronym, Babs, I feel you could have done a bit better, Sarah said, getting a snort. No, it's the last names of her parents. U for Uzumaki, UC for Uchiha, N for Namikaze and S for Senju, but we can all agree that that is quite the mouthful. So I compressed it, she explained, getting an O from the two as they nodded as they all yawned. Well, I think that's a sign to go back to bed. Good night, Babs. Good night, Duke, Sarah said, getting a good night in return as they all got up, heading to their room. Babs and Duke's room. Lying back in bed, he watched his wife get their new child comfortable as they fell into blissful unconsciousness as she sung their child a lullaby. Good night, Duke, she said, kissing him, which he returned. Night, Babs, and good night, Naruto, he said, kissing their new daughter on the forehead as she yawned, bringing a smile to their faces. Babs because she could finally have a complete family, and Duke because his wife was happy. 6 years later. Naruto Uzumaki Uchiha Namikaze Senju Devlin. The entirety of Motorcity shook hearing the earth-shaking yell, while one particular thought, "Oh, whole named used, I'm in trouble." A 6-year-old thought was she ran from a mob of veils wearing a pair of tight black pants with bandages wrapped around the shin and some brown sandals with a red t-shirt tucked in with a green gem necklace around her neck with a old worn headband adorned with what could be seen as a leaf around her neck as a collar. The most interesting thing about her was the fact her eyes were snow white with black sclera on top of her head, covered by a black bow were 2 long wolf ears and 10 bushy wolf, foxtails. Hiding behind a building, the mob ran by as she looked out the alley, saying, "Hey suckers, they'll never catch me, now to get me that ramen." "Oh, and where would you go to get that, Naruto?" she heard, making her jump, causing her nails to dig into the ceiling as she looked down to see a slender young woman wearing the standard uniform with her hair done in a braid, with her warm brown eyes shining with mirth behind her sunglasses. Hey Sarah, it's great to see ya. You look good. Did you lose weight?" she said lamely as the grown woman grinned. "Stuck, huh?" she said, leaning against the wall as the young girl narrowed her eyes as she growled. "Would you please just get me down, sis?" she asked, pulling the puppy dog eyes as the taller woman shook her head. "I'll get the crowbar," she said, getting the young girl to whimper as the tall woman shook her head. "It's funny you're fearless when involving fighting, or anything that involves danger, but you're as fearful as a kitten when this happens," she said, prying her hands from the ceiling. Yeah, just get me down," she said as she pried her feet from the ceiling, allowing her to land on her feet. "Are you sure you're not part cat instead of a fox and wolf?" Sarah asked sarcastically as they walked back to the Devlin home, getting a shrug in return as the young demon walked back with her hands behind her head. Devlin family home. The duo finally reached home that seemed over the top for any normal person, as this was no run-of-the-mill home but a large estate surrounded by car parts with her parents and the veils she hid with 2 costumes. "Naruto, can you explain why you did this?" Babs asked, wearing a pair of white shorts with red stripes with a white top and jacket with red stripes, along with a gold belt hanging on her shoulder, with her wrapped up in her husband's arms wearing an alternate colored version of her clothes. "I thought they could stand to get into the season of the holidays," she said, spreading her arms to the group as the girls were wearing witch outfits with purple and green stockings with high heels as the men were dressed as skeletons. "She makes a good point, dear. They really haven't expressed the holiday, have they?" Duke asked as she nodded before her mother schooled her features. "Still, don't you think you owe them an apology?" she asked, making her daughter of 4 years to tilt her head to the side before nodding. "I'm really sorry, everyone. What I did was over the top," she said sincerely as they waved it off. Since she was able to walk, she's been pulling pranks which involved them chasing after her, and in total honesty, they all enjoyed it because it gave them a reason to exercise and make a game out of it, although Sarah is the only person to find and catch her. Plus, it was always funny seeing the young girl plan a new prank every day. "Now, Naruto, what are you going to do since you got your morning exercise out of the way?" Duke asked, sitting on the hood of one of his many projects waiting to be made. "Thinking on it," she said. "I think I'll go for a walk around Motorcity, see if there is anything I can do." They nodded as she ran off before Babs said, "Make sure you're back by dinner." "You really think you gotta inform her on that? The girl eats more than everyone in our home combined and still has enough room for another 20 servings. She knows when dinner starts cooking and when it's finished, like it's engraved in her memory," Duke said, getting relenting shrug from both Babs and Sarah before they walked off into the home. With Naruto, what should I do? Hit that old guy's place? Nah, I'll visit during lunch. I've been to practically everywhere in Motorcity. She thought hopping from the roofs. Since she had those D-King version of her, she knew how to do a lot of things using that odd sensation by focusing it through her body, like walk on water and even defy physics by walking up walls and on water. She even found some odd marking on her arm but knew nothing on it, so she decided to leave it be till she has another strange dream or curiosity finally claws at her brain. In mid-hop she heard what appeared to be water, causing her to turn her focus to see what appeared to be some forest in Motorcity. Now that looks promising, she said, tying her headband around her eyes and focused on her tails letting fade from existence, since nobody in Motorcity besides her family at the estate and the old man from that old diner knew about them. Let's go exploring, shall we, Naruto? She said to herself, slyly jumping from roof to roof as she jumped over some hovering machines. Never think I'd see something like this here in Motorcity, she said, standing on the edge of a deep ravine as she looked down to see a large and lush green forest with trees and animal life drinking from the stream. Now how would I go about getting down there? Oh, there's a way, she said, noticing a large branch just within jumping distance as she jumped with her hands outstretched and swung onto a thick tree trunk and slid down till her feet were firmly planted onto the ground. How about I take a walk around, see what's around here, she said to herself as she walked through the large forest land. Another place in the dense forest. Kaya, head down to the lake and get some fish for dinner, all right? A dark-skinned woman asked, wearing a brown dress with a black belt and fur pelt on her waist, asked, looking at her daughter sitting on the porch of their treehouse. All right, Mom, anything specific? A younger woman asked, with spiky green hair, wearing a slightly oversized tan shirt and skirt with her hair in a ponytail, asked. Whatever you grab, I've already got the fruit and vegetables to eat, she said, getting a nod as she slid down a vine. What to get? Carp, I think Mom's tired of that since we've had it twice this week. Tuna. It has been some time since we've had some fresh tuna, she thought, swinging from branch to branch when she noticed a shadow fly past her. What was that? She thought, following it as she trailed behind it into the denser forestry until they came to a stop on the top of a tree. You're good for following me this well. Only person who has been able to keep track of me was my sister Sarah, the figure said as it turned to show a girl the same age as her with a large black bow in her black, red, silver hair, with her eyes covered and 6 whisker marks adjourned to her cheeks. Who are you? Kaya asked cautiously, stepping forward, reaching for a small knife in a leather pouch strapped behind her back. I'm Naruto. Naruto. N.S. Devlin, but Naruto Devlin or Naruto is fine with me. It's nice to meet you, she started with her hand outstretched. Kaya said, nothing making the young girl sighs. This is where you take my hand and tell me your name. Let's start over. No, I got that. Sorry, I'm Kaya Fang. I don't think I can say I've seen you here in Terra before, she said, making the young girl raise an eyebrow. Terra? Is this where the place is called? She asked as Kaya suspected she was looking around. Yes, everyone here are called Terra dwellers since we live off the earth. But how did you get down here? She asked, making the young girl point up. I jumped from some tree branches. I was leaving my home when I saw this place and my curiosity got the better of me since I've never seen this place before and I've been all over Motorcity, so I just had to come and check it out, she said with a grin while scratching the back of her head. So you just jumped from stories high in the air just to look around? She asked, getting a nod from the girl causing her to sigh. You're an odd one, you know that? She asked, getting a grin. Odd is the most interesting and enjoyable way to live. You doing anything if you or I can help? She said, telling the green-haired girl to lead to where they're going. It's my turn to get dinner for me and Mom, so I'm going to catch some fish for Mom to prepare, she said, getting an "aw" from her new partner. So do you just become friends with anyone you meet, or is it all unintentional? Kaya asked as the two traversed the trees. Mom says I've got a knack for making just about anybody my friend. If you go into Motorcity, everyone there has nothing but nice things to say. Dad says it's because of my pranks, she said as an afterthought. Pranks? Kaya asked as they landed by the large lake as Kaya grabbed a nearby basket as the two stepped into the water, or more so Kaya stepped into the water while Naruto walked on it. How are you doing that? She asked, seeing the mysterious girl's feet not even submerge themselves in the water. Looking down, she said, don't know, I always get this odd sensation and I just know what to do, although it's always after a dream I have. Dreams? What about? She asked, grabbing some fish while Naruto tossed some in the basket perfectly. I always see an older version of myself in some kind of moment with friends or fighting. It's weird, really, but whenever I see those dreams I feel really sad when I wake up, she explained. It could be reincarnation? She suggested, getting a question mark over her companion's head. What's that? She asked as the two sat on the edge of dry land. Reincarnation is when after a soul comes to an end it is given a second chance to live, and from what my mom tells me there are some cases when that soul's old memories bleed into their new body as dreams. That could be the case, she explained, getting shrug in return. If things get too out of hand I'll come to you since you're pretty smart about these things. So want to hang out? She asked, getting a raised eyebrow from the tanned girl. Why? She asked as the two of them walked back across the land. I want to know more about my new friend and show you some of my pranks, she suggested, getting a shrug. Sure, just let me drop this stuff off at our hut and we can go, although my mom will want to meet you first, she said, getting a shrug as Naruto followed her through the trees back at Kaya's home. Hey mom, I got dinner and I wanted you to meet a new friend, she said, walking into the treehouse as Naruto followed. Alright, just let me finish up, Naruto heard before an older version of Kaya walked in from what she guessed was the kitchen. Thank you, sweetie, and you must be Kaya's new friend. That's good, she doesn't have many friends. What is your name, dear? She asked in a kind tone, squatting down to eye level. I'm Naruto. N.S. Devlin, but you can call me Naruto Devlin or just Naruto. It's nice to meet you, ma'am, she said politely as she extended her hand as the older woman grasped it and shook before retracting. I must ask, child, how did you get out here if you're blind? And aren't your parents worried? She asked, making Kaya's eyes widen for thinking that. No, I've traversed all around Motorcity with no problem and my parents know I can handle myself. But no, I'm not blind. I was born with a pair of problems, so I keep them covered, she said, gesturing to her eyes and the bow. May we see? Kaya asked, getting a shrug. I don't see why not, she said, pulling the bow from her hair, revealing her black wolf ears as she pulled the headband down to show the sides of her head having veins bulging as her eyes were enlarged before they faded as the eyes shrunk to normal level with black slits as her tails were revealed. The two women were wide-eyed before a small blush formed on Kaya's face as Naruto said, You can see why I cover them. So can I, mom? Kaya asked, getting a nod with an afterthought. Just make sure you make it home in time for dinner, okay, Kaya? She said, getting a nod as the two ran out the house, missing the mother's amused smile as she shook her head. It seems Kaya's got her first crush, to be young again, she thought as she walked back into the kitchen with the fish, tuna. Motorcity. So Naruto, where do you live? Kaya asked, following us till they hit a high point near a tower, seeing her point at a bright building. Over there at the Devlin estate. Although my dad is one for over-the-top theatrics, mom tends to keep him in line, she said as Kaya nodded. So what kinds of pranks do you do? She asked, seeing Naruto point to the large supply of paint. Just stuff to brighten people's lives. Living here things are kinda boring and depressing since Kane decided to make this world a slum, so whatever I can do to cheer people up is what I do. Given a laugh, she said with a grin while her new partner in crime only had concern written on her face. Are you sure they won't be mad? She asked, getting a nod as she watched Naruto walk along the side of a large building in the middle of Motorcity as she started to paint it. Of course, Kaya, besides this is one of the abandoned buildings nobody's lived in since before we were born. And from what I heard that butthead Kane is going to send some cronies to destroy this thing. Might as well give him something to see, she said, halfway finished as she drew a crowd watching the young girl work before climbing back up. Come on, Kaya, grab a brush and live a little, she said, tying it around her waist as she pulled some cans down with her, placing them on vacant window sills. What should I paint? She asked, getting a laugh. Whatever comes to mind, she said as Kaya thought about it before starting making her laugh. See, that's it. Live a little, bend some rules, throw caution to the wind. Tell me, what do you think of my little masterpiece? Naruto said, standing on an open sill as everyone cheered, whistling and laughing at the image of Kane with his skull open, showing a baseball with a large screw in it as a dialogue box nearby said. My IQ is smaller than my shoe size, and with it was an arrow pointing to said show with another bubble holding an 8. What do you think, Naruto? She asked, causing the young girl and the crowd below to come over to see a rather impressive painting of Terra with the wildlife drinking from the lake on another side of the building. That's amazing. Are you sure you've never painted before? She asked with her arm wrapped around Kaya's neck, getting a shake of the head. Well, I gotta say this is impressive for someone who's never held a brush before, a real eye for detail to be honest, she said nodding when both of their stomachs growled. It's still early and a ways before dinner. Want to get a bite to eat? My treat, she asked getting a nod as they hopped down getting congratulated on the most recent artwork which they returned with a smile. Jacob's Diner. Hey Gramps, you here? She asked as they walked up the stairs of the handmade diner. Yeah kid, and I saw what you and your lady friend did. Gotta hand it to ya Naruto, I've never seen truer words come from him than that moment, he said, whipping an imaginary tear from his eye getting an eye roll. He was a skinny sort with a red bandana wrapped around his head with a white shirt and ripped blue jean vest and jeans. Kaya, this is Jacob but I call him Gramps, she said introducing them. Aw, so you're the young lady's partner in crime, haha kid, you are one hell of an artist, you're a Taradweller? He asked getting a nod. I'll meet a few back in my prime, nice sort, real down to earth, so what can I get you since Naruto's gonna order her usual, he said, pointing to the girl who now had a fork in hand as her mouth watered. I guess I'll get what she's getting since by the looks of her face it seems pretty good, she said getting a nod. 2 Naruto specials coming up, he said going behind the counter as Naruto said. So Kaya, what did you think about your first prank? I do a lot of crazy things but since this was your first time I thought I'd start you out soft, she said getting a shrug. It was really fun truthfully, can we do this some more later? She asked getting nod. Yeah, I haven't had this much fun in forever. So Kaya, what is it like in Terra? She asked making the young woman think. It's a small community like I said. We have our own government as my mom is the leader of Terra as her father before her, and so on. When I come of age I'll have to take over, she said. That's cool, I don't know what I intend on doing in the future, except stop Kane, she said getting a raised eyebrow. Stop Kane? How are you going to do that? She asked with Jacob wondering the same thing. He's ruined the people of Motorcity's life because of the things he's done, and even with his perfect utopia he tries to take away people's freedom down here because they're as happy as they can make themselves with the lives they made from what they have left to salvage. I intend to tear his utopia out of the sky and show the people that's topside just who they're following for who he really is, she said with passion as Jacob nodded. Well kid, when you start to take action past the paint you can count on me to have your back from car parts when you get one too. Weapons to fight off his machines, who knows, maybe your little girlfriend will support you, he said with a grin setting down 2 bowls of broth and noodles while the two blushed. Hey now, Kaya's my friend and I just met her today, she said with Kaya nodding with both fighting down a blush when Jacob said. I don't hear either of you disagreeing, you know, he said when he got hit in the forehead with a straw. Shut up, she said while slowly eating the noodles before looking over at Kaya, seeing her stare at her noodles as she took her fork and swirled some noodles till there was a good amount as she held it to her mouth. Open, she said while Kaya hesitantly opened hers and swallowed the noodles before she snatched the utensil from her mouth. Oh, Kaya and Naruto sitting in a tree, he started before getting hit with a spoon. Knock it off, Gramps, she growled when she was tapped on the shoulder. When she turned she saw Kaya with her cheeks bulging with a stray noodle on the side of her lip, making her chuckle thinking. She is pretty cute, wait, where did that come from? Plucking the noodle from her cheek she ate it, making the girl blush, asking, can I get some more, Jacob? Nodding he took both their bowls and gave them their next helping. But the elder is right, I and many of the Terra dwellers will help you when you need us. She grinned. All right. Now I just need a ride, maybe I can find an old car lying around, I mean Motorcity has scraps in surplus. Jacob shrugged saying, you'd be surprised kid, heck most of this place is made from car parts. Pointing to the table, it was just a ceramic tabletop resting firmly on a car engine. Kid, ain't it a bit late? Jacob said pointing to the clock, making them turn to see it saying, 5:48 p.m., making her eyes widen. Holy hell, come on Kaya, we gotta get you home before your mom hunts me down, and I gotta get home before my mom cuts off my tails and makes a coat out of them, she said grabbing Kaya by her arm, dragging her out of Jacob's diner. CYA pops, she said with Kaya waving goodbye, making him chuckle. Ha, silly kid, but she's got heart. I wonder if that old car is still there, he thought going into his workshop thinking. With Naruto and Kaya, and we're here, record time, she said huffing as Kaya had swirls in her eyes before shaking it away. Thanks for hanging out with me, I had fun, she said with a small smile getting a grin. No problem, we're friends, and if you need me you know where to find me since I showed you where I live and you know where Jacob's place is, so go to those two places if you need anything," she said, putting her arms around her friend's neck, giving her a hug as the Taradweller returned it with a slight blush. No problem, Naruto," she said, giving her a quick peck on the cheek before running, missing the young girl's growing blush. "I better head home," she said, running through the streets. With Naruto. "Hey mom, hey dad, I'm home," she said, walking through the estate as her mom walked through a door, seeing the spring in her daughter's step causing her to ask. "What's got you so chipper, sweetie?" she asked, getting a raised eyebrow. "Chipper? What makes you say that?" Naruto asked, her tails that were wagging rapidly. Hee sorry, but I made my first friend," she said with a smile as her tails swung even faster if that was possible as her mother wrapped her in a hug. "That's great. What's the kid's name?" Babs asked, happy her daughter has finally made a friend her age. "Her name's Kaya and she's from that forest area in Motorcity. We had a lot of fun with a prank. She's really good at painting even though it was her first time at it," she said in a single breath, seeing her mother grin. "Ah Dookie, our little girl's got her first crush," she getting a screeching halt from the music room as her father ran in. "What? Who is he?" he asked, getting a groan from the little girl while her mother sniggered as her husband triggered his overprotective father mode. "Not he, sweetie, a girl from the Terra lands. She made her first friend and made her first crush in the same day," she said, hugging her daughter, getting a groan from the little girl. "Oh, what's her name, princess?" he asked, getting in close as their daughter averting her gaze. "Kaya Fang," she said silently, getting a squeal from her mother, making her think, "Oh God, help me, put me out of my misery." With Kaya, "Oh Gaia, please put me out of my misery," she thought, being wrapped up in a hug from her mother, telling her about her time with Naruto. "Oh, my baby's got a crush with her first friend. I think I smell the ceremonial incense and bonding paint," she said as a forethought, making the young girl turn completely red save for her spiky green hair, making her resemble a tomato. "Mom!" she exclaimed, causing the older woman to laugh. "You never know, sweetie, when your father and I were your age were the same as you and Naruto. There was just something about him that naturally attracted me to him," she said with a sigh, picking up an old portrait of her husband when she was pregnant with Kaya. He was a strong-looking older man with a dark tan and green marking on his body, with wavy toxic green hair and brown eyes much like her daughter's own. "I'm just kidding, dear, but honestly I wouldn't be surprised if you two end up that close. Some people are instantly attracted to each other, spiritually bound to the other since birth. It just takes some time to find out," she said, patting her daughter on the head before sitting at the table. "Now come on, dinner's ready," she said as Kaya joined her mother for dinner. 10 years later, tap asterisk asterisk tap asterisk. Late checkout. Late checkout," a figure said under her large queen-sized bed in black silk sheets. "Girl instead," she said as from under the bed a 16-year-old Naruto. Getting up, she showed she matured quite a bit since she was a child, as her form was taut and firm, wearing black boy shorts with a red tank top supporting her growing low D cup, with her hair in a mess as it was now at mid-back. Opening the window to her terrace, she was hugged by her girlfriend of 6 years, Kaya, who like her had grown, standing slightly at neck length as her hair was done in a ponytail, kissing her secret lover's neck, getting a low groan. "Kaya, as much as I love the thought of waking up like this, what is it?" she asked, pulling her back onto the bed with her laying on her stomach. Flashback 6 years ago. "Ah!" Naruto yelled, running to the bathroom, turning on the hot water as she scrubbed her hands and face when her parents and surrogate sister Sarah came running in the room. "Sweetie, what's wrong?" Duke asked with a wrench in his hands while her mother and sister had a crowbar and ratchet. It's not coming off," she said in a panic, still scrubbing as the others could only watch in confusion and worry. "What's not coming off?" Babs asked, turning off the water as Naruto turned it back on, trying to get it off. "The blood. The blood isn't coming off," she yelled, getting worried looks from the three as Duke brought his daughter into a hug. "Princess, there is no blood. You just had a nightmare," he said, rubbing her back gently, causing the 10-year-old to cry. "It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare, it was real. The screams, the smell of blood and the bodies," she wailed, clutching her father tighter as she rocked back and forth when her father stood up, bringing her with him as they went into the kitchen. The three could only watch in worry as the normally happy and smiling girl they were so accustomed to go into a frantic mess as she rocked in her seat with her hands clutching the sides of her head. With her eyes closed shut, Naruto, tell us what you saw. Sarah asked, sitting next to her, placing a hand on her shoulder only for the girl to flinch away, shaking. It was frightening. I was, or at least I think it was me, she started when Babs said. You think? She asked, getting a shake of the head. Kaya said that when a soul dies it's reincarnated or some other spiritual business, and those memories and actions sometimes bleed into that soul's current life. An older-looking version of me was fighting in what looked like a war, and we were winning when the enemy brought out this giant monster with 9 eyes before it turned into a tree of some kind with a single eye, and it started killing everybody. She started covering her ears, hearing their screams. Me and everyone who survived the first attack retreated as we tried to think of a way to counter it when the others died on the way back. Oh God, Hinata, Ino, Anko, Tsunade, I'm so sorry I couldn't save you, she said as tears escaped her eyes. What happened after that, Naruto, do you remember? Sarah asked, gently rubbing her back, trying to calm the girl's breathing as she was hyperventilating. I was angry, very angry, and killed the army that took their lives with my bare hands before I confronted the monster and sealed it away, but I didn't seal it away, she said as her tails curled around her while her ears flattened. If you sealed it but didn't seal it, then what happened? This monster, do you remember how many tails it had, if any? Duke asked, getting on his knees to get to eye level with his worried daughter. Looking into her frantic white eyes. I had 10. I was just so angry when I was fighting the army. The man summoned the dead to fight as I took control of them to help me. I sealed it away, but I didn't just seal it away, I consumed it. I became the monster. She wailed as her daughter wrapped her arms around her father's neck, crying. You are no monster, her mother yelled, making her daughter's head snap up as her mother cupped her cheek. You're still our little girl. The same little girl we've raised since you were an infant, and no dream or nightmare is going to tell us or you otherwise. Naruto, there is something we have to tell you, Babs said, grabbing the note she found with her daughter and the cloak. As she handed her daughter the note and photo, Babs, Duke and Sarah went into an explanation of how they found her as they pointed to the seal on her shoulder. Remembering the seal from her memory, she bit her thumb, drawing some blood as she swiped it across the mark, as several large scrolls fell to the ground with several smaller scrolls, and another note fell on top of those. Picking up the note, there was a photo of Naruto with several women attached as they all smiled as she read aloud. If you have found this, then Naruto has finally hit the age of 10 and regained her memories of her past life and activated the seal. If this is the case, then you deserve to know that Naruto isn't from your world. The world she's from is a world of bloodshed and loss as shinobi, or what you would know as ninjas. Growing up, Naruto was born an orphan as me and Kushina died the night of her birth when we sealed the second strongest of the tailed beast creatures of destructive power, with this being known as the Kyuubi no Kitsune, or more commonly known as the nine-tailed fox. When she was growing up, she grew up alone, ostracized by my mistake of trusting the populace, of thinking they'd see a child that bears a heavy burden for their safety as a hero. I was a fool to believe this, as it wasn't the case, as they treated her as the monster Givshe knew of, a pain no child should know, as she closed her heart to others that treated her like the Nine Tails as she slowly fell to darkness, training to become strong. This all changed when she met her first fiancé, Hinata Hyuga, a child of a pure soul who didn't see her as a monster but more so as a person who was given an unfair slot in life, and with her help slowly thawed her frozen heart. As she grew, she met more people she loved who she held dear, as her heart grew bigger with each meeting and heartfelt embrace. This all went south when the Fourth Great War happened, as destructive group known as the Akatsuki came into the light, attempting to create the Ten Tails, a demon that they intended to use to bring about peace, as they used it to bring their control over the world. Naruto wasn't the only person to contain a powerful demon, as she and 8 others were known as Jinchuriki, the power of human sacrifice. Letting them use that demon's power, they had already gained 8 of the 9, leaving Naruto the sole Jinchuriki in existence as the previously resurrected Jubi, 10 Tails. With the command of the one who summoned it, was intent on using its power, but it was missing the Kyuubi, the 9 Tails, to complete it. While in Naruto's enraged state, she killed the man who summoned it and attempted to do what her ancestor did to the first 10 Tails and become its Jinchuriki like the sage who did so before her, but that was not the case, as she instead became the Jubi, giving her immortality as well as those she spreads her blood through, or mates, only for them to have fallen during the war in her arms. In her depression, me and the 3 other Hokage, Fire Shadow, regressed her age and sealed away her memories and sent her somewhere she could have the life she should have had in the first place. With this letter there are several scrolls from the other villages ranging from jutsu to kinjutsu, and the smaller scrolls are her personal things from techniques to weapons and mementos. Naruto, you may be angry at this fool of a father for making your life like this in the first place, but know that I truly am sorry and that your mother and I as well as your loved ones will always love you. So, wherever you are, I pray you live a happier life. Signed, Minato Namikaze Senju, the Yondaime Hokage. To be honest, everyone was shocked as she was held by Babs, Duke and Sarah, as Babs said, "It doesn't matter if you're from another world, Naruto, you're still our daughter and we love you, and I know this means no consolation but happy birthday, sweetie." "She's right, Naruto, you're still my little princess and that will never change," Duke said, kissing her forehead, bringing her closer to tears. "Besides, we're happy you came here, little sis, you became that ray of light we desperately needed and you brought that the moment you came here," Sarah said, whipping away a tear. "Now it's still early, how about we go back to bed for a couple hours and eat later, huh?" Sarah asked with a nod as the other three nodded as they all went back to their beds, while Naruto placed the large collection of scrolls by her bed and the photo on her nightstand while she laid down and closed her eyes, worried the most important person in her life will reject her. After breakfast that same morning, "So Naruto, what are you going to do today?" Babs asked, getting a shrug. "I'm going to probably get some fresh air. That note is a bit much to take in. I was going to probably go see Kaya as well," she said. Despite the emotional wake-up call she experienced, she still couldn't fight down a blush, though she managed to hide it well enough. Nodding, she said, "All right, sweetie, just be sure to be careful, all right?" Running out the door after kissing them all on the cheek, she said, "CYA mom, CYA dad, CYA sis," Duke said, stretching. "It's great to see her in better spirits than earlier. I never thought I would see our usually proud daughter so vulnerable." Taking the plates to the sink, Sarah said, "Yeah, but so long as she's got people there for her, I wouldn't be worried." Babs and Duke nodded, going about their business in the estate, with Babs having a grin. "Tara, Mom, I'm going out for some air," Kaya said to her mother as she walked out the treehouse, feeling some disturbance as she followed her intuition to see Naruto sitting on a branch deep in the forest land, wearing a long-sleeved shirt and jeans with her ears flat on her head and her tails wrapped around herself. "Naruto?" she asked, getting one ear to perk up as she looked over to see her friend Kaya. "I always mean to find out how you know where I am whenever I'm here," she tried to say humorously, though Kaya could hear the change in her voice. "Naruto, we've been friends for 10 years. I had to know where you were because you'd always pop up out of nowhere like a bloody ninja. But jokes aside, I know something's wrong, Naruto, talk to me," she said, sitting next to her. Sighing, she said, "You always do know when something's up. Not even my parents could pick up on it. Well, remember when we first met I told you about those dreams?" Nodding, she said, "Yeah, but you said it was an older version of you. Why?" "Well, it turns out it wasn't my reincarnation but me in the past sense," she said, explaining the events that transpired as of early in this morning and what she read as the girls slowly cried while Naruto slid away slowly. "Naruto?" Kaya said, whipping her tears away, seeing her friend shy away. She went to touch her only for her to flinch away as Naruto said, "You probably think I'm a monster now, a murderer," she said quietly before she was wrapped up in a hug from behind. "Naruto, we've been friends for years. I know who you are. Sure, I didn't expect you to be some warrior from another world, but you're still someone I truly care for," she said as Naruto heard Kaya's heart race. Kaya," she started when her lips were sealed slightly by the Taradweller before she pulled back. "Besides, my mom told me love is born when two are connected spiritually. Maybe that applies to across worlds as well," she suggested as she was pulled into another soft kiss. "I would like to believe she was right," Naruto said, putting her forehead against Kaya's as she wrapped her tails around them, both falling into a comfortable lull. Flashback over, "Naruto, were you listening?" Kaya said, sitting on the demon's stomach while leaning in her face. "Baby, it's not even 2. I can't even think this early. Besides, I was thinking about how we got together in the first place," she said, getting a smirk from her lover. "My mother is doing something today," she said, getting the girl to open her eyes. "Kaya, not to sound weird, but your mom is always doing something. You kinda need to be specific with this," Naruto expressed, getting a sigh. "My 16th birthday is today, and as such our people are holding a ceremony to see who weds me. I can't back out of it and mother can't do anything to negate it," she said, feeling Naruto's hands cup both of her cheeks. "What can I do about it though? I mean, it's not like I can just run in and shout, I object. Like some cheesy movie, can I? She asked, getting a shake of the head. You've watched too many movies. No, it's a ceremony where any man or woman competes for the girl or man's hand in marriage. The competition being a fight to prove the strongest, as it's anything goes so long as no lives are lost, she explained as Naruto began to see where this was going. Since she acquired those scrolls, she trained herself using everything she read and even used a skill called the Shadow Clone to speed up the training process, using them to read and practice the chakra-required material while she placed high-quality gravity and resistance seals on her to make her stronger and faster while practicing with weapons, and found herself relearning what she knew at a far faster pace. And she even went to teach Kaya the physical aspect of things, but felt something come from her like she was forming her own chakra network, a large one. So I assume you want me to enter and win your hand in marriage? She surmised, getting a nod as Naruto grinned snher neck, pulling her head closer, causing her to blush. My Kaya, if I didn't know better I'd say you were asking me to marry you, you naughty girl. And you know naughty girls need to be punished? She said huskily as she flipped her love on her back as she pinned Kaya's arms down above her head while kissing her while going for her neck. Naruto. Stop. She tried to fight back only for Naruto to growl in her ear. Although my love, I'm not opposed to being your husband, wife, whichever really, and although I don't have a ring to give you, this will work well enough, she said, sitting up as she took off her jade green necklace and put it around Kaya's neck. So what time will the ceremony start? Naruto asked, lying down as she pulled Kaya in close with her arms around her neck while lying under the blanket. Today at noon, she said, turning in Naruto's hold. Good, this way I can sleep with you a little longer. Night, Kaya, she said, yawning, which Kaya returned as the two promptly fell asleep, missing the door to the room creak open with a slight flash before closing. Hours later. Naruto, hurry, the ceremony starts in a couple hours, Kaya said, standing by the bathroom door when it opened, revealing Naruto in a new change in attire. She wore her headband around her eyes again, wearing a black long-sleeve high-collar kimono top that was left partially open, showing she had bandages wrapped around her chest, with black Anbu-styled pants with the standard shinobi sandals, and had two swords, one being an all-black chikudo on her waist, with the other being a giant sword with a motorcycle handle, Red Queen, on her back, as she had several pouches on her sides. The thing that had Kaya blushing was her being partially straightened as it came over her left eye, leaving the right one exposed as her 10 tails fanned out. Smirking, she asked, "So I take it I look good?" All Kaya could do was nod, getting a snigger from the girl as they heard a knock on the door. "Naruto, what are you going to do today?" They heard Naruto's mom Babs from the other side. "I'm heading down to Kaya's. She said she needed my help with something," she said. "All right, just make sure you eat something before you do something crazy like last time," Babs said, getting a groan. "One time and nobody lets you forget it. Don't worry mom, I'll get a bite to eat on the way there," she groaned, getting a snigger. "Okay. Oh, and good morning, Kaya. Make sure Naruto doesn't do anything stupid, all right?" Babs said, shocking them as Kaya was wide-eyed as they looked at each other. "You two aren't as quiet as you think. By the way, you two looked so cute sleeping," Babs said, walking away from the door laughing. "How did she?" Kaya said, getting a shake of the head. "Kaya, one thing you should know about my mom is that she's virtually a ninja when she wants to be. It's one of the reasons I don't prank her, because she can be, for a better term, frightening," Naruto said, walking to her terrace window. She opened it. "You mean to say intimidating?" Kaya proposed. "In that term, yes. Now come one, I got some ass to kick and a wife to marry," Naruto said with a smile, which Kaya returned as they jumped off the balcony before running through the junkyard. "So, how does the whole ceremony go? I mean, there has to be some limits to it, right?" Naruto asked while running through the streets of Motorcity. Nodding, Kaya said, "Well, it does have limits, one being the number of fights depend on the number of people participating, and there are no men versus men and women versus women, it's just all who chose to fight." Nodding, she relented. "Anything else? Once there is a winner, the two will be married and go through a bonding ceremony where the two are painted with a ceremonial bonding ink by the current leader. The ink is usually full body save for a few areas," Kaya said as they finally reached Terra, as she gestured to the men and women with their markings exposed. "Oh, I guess that makes sense, but the marks all appear the same, two on both shoulders, two along the ribs, and two on the legs. How would anyone know the difference?" she asked, getting a snort. "They all have a subtle difference. You see the two women by the lake? And the men picking the fruit? She said, pointing to the two, making Naruto lift her headband to see they did have a subtle difference. Some of the edges are more narrow or ornate. Ah, I see, she said, looking at her watch, making her eyes widen. Come on, it's almost 12. And where do I go to be permitted to participate? She asked while being dragged through Terra. Tribe chambers. Mother. Kaya said, walking in with Naruto in tow as her mother turned, making Naruto and Kaya's eyes widen seeing her guest. Mom, what are you doing here? Naruto asked, getting a snort. Sweetie, you are far too much like me. Kaya's mom and I have been friends since we were the age you two met. I'm guessing you were entering to win Kaya's hand? She said with a grin, making the two blush. Oh Babs, you're horrible. So Naruto, I hear you're from another universe, she said, getting a hesitant nod. And your world has some set laws, especially with abilities like your own, one of which is a term called polygamy. Again she nodded. When Kaya wrapped her arms around Naruto's, well, truth is our people don't mind that so much. And we're understanding of your laws and obligations to keep your family lines and abilities ongoing, she continued, getting a nod from the girl. But that's for another time. I understand you're here for the right to wed my daughter and to let you know you have the right to use anything at your disposal, even your abilities, so long as you don't kill anyone, she said, getting a nod. Are you wearing any armor? She asked, getting a negative, showing she was only wearing the bandages around her torso and her opera-style fingerless gloves. And your weapons? She asked, showing her Naruto's two swords and the knives she carries in her pouches. Satisfied, she said, all right, do know that with you now in this fight there are a total of 12 fighters, few of which are twice your and Kaya's age. Raising an eyebrow, she asked, are the fights separated by rounds? Nodding. Yes, everyone fights the first round, which splits that to 6, then 3 teams of 2, then the winning team fights last. As they spoke, a loud horn went off as Kaya said, there's the announcement bell, you'd better go and get prepared. I gotta get ready too. The fighters are converging in the ceremonial fighting grounds. It's the flat of land in the center of the lake. Shoving her out the room, Kaya's mom said, she's well toned and physiqued. I can tell I'm going to have some rather healthy grandbabies to spoil. Blushing while changing behind a screen, she shouted, Mom. Looking at Babs, she said, just like when we were kids, huh? She nodded. Oh, without a doubt. In fact, if it weren't for me and Duke Keys wouldn't have had the nerve to enter and win. Whispering, she said, it's the same reason I told Kaya about the ceremony. Besides, those two are just so cute together. Babs nodded, pulling out the camera she used earlier this morning to show the image of Kaya sleeping on Naruto's chest before the two left, giving Kaya her space to change. Fighting grounds. The fishing grounds are surrounding the ceremonial arena. Kinda like the hero's water in Taki, Naruto thought, remembering her visit to Taki as a genin. Sitting in front, she saw that there was a small group of people, counting including her 5 women and 7 men. As she walked to that group, she was confronted. Hey, what do you think you're doing here? Turning her attention to the woman who was slightly older than her, she said, like you all, I'm competing for Kaya's hand, and if you think I'm some pushover because I'm blind, you've got another thing coming. Outsiders are not welcome. Get lost before you get hurt, the tallest male said, getting a snort from her. Oh yes, the stereotypical muscle man talking big. I spoke to the leader here and she gave me permission to fight. Got any problems, take them up with her, and I think you should shut your mouth. It seems she has something to say. They followed her arm to see Kaya's mom, and who she guessed was Kaya in a shroud of some kind, as they stood on a naturally made stage. My brothers and sisters of Terra, it is another momentous day as another young woman's coming of age has arrived. My daughter and your future leader of Terra, Kaya, she announced while gesturing to her daughter, who threw off her covering, nearly making Naruto's eyes pop out from behind the covering of her old worn headband while trying to wet her now dry throat. Kaya was wearing a type of ceremonial clothing which comprised of a forest green nylon belly dancer style pants with the legs being nearly see-through, while the crotch was solid jade in color with a type of flowy fabric attached to both of her wrists that was earth tone brown. Her stomach was bare while her chest was covered by a tan tube top that covered her chest while leaving her neck bare save for Naruto's necklace, as the top was held up by the sleeves that were attached at her armpit, with her hair being left flowing. To Naruto she was breathtaking, and Naruto knew that the others fighting for her hand agreed but smiled when she subtly waved to her, which she gave a small smile. As Kaya turned her attention to the crowd, her mother said, like every generation, you few who have the courage to fight for my daughter's hand until there is only one winner in the end. The man who spoke earlier said, but boss, Why should we allow an outsider to take part in this holy ceremony? As she looked down, everyone knew he stepped in it, saying, We should allow it? I am the leader here. I allow Naruto the right to fight because she has known my daughter since they were children and deserves the right to fight as much as anyone here. But if you have some trepidation, then you too will be the first to fight. Gesturing to the solid landmass in the center of the lake, she said, Naruto, Reigns, you two will be the first fighters of the ceremony. The man jumped in the boat with a ferryman getting him across as Naruto followed on another boat waiting for the start of the fight. With Kaya and the others, Hey Kaya, haven't seen you in a while there, she heard, seeing Jacob walk over with Duke and Sarah. Hey Jacob, it's great to see you again. Come to cheer Naruto on? She asked, getting a nod from everyone. Yeah, after you two left a couple years back, I've been looking around my workshop for a gift for Naruto. I did the same thing for Duke when I first came to Motorcity, he said, pulling out a rolled-up piece of paper from his vest pocket. I gotta say, I've practically tore my place apart trying to find this little beauty, but like I gave her old man the map to his ride, I picked the car that would best match her, although with how long it's been since I've found this, she's going to have a bit of work to do, he said, looking at the arena floor. So the fight starts yet? Duke asked, getting a shake of the head from Kaya. No, we give the fighters a chance to gauge their opponents for a moment. I think they've had enough time, Mom, she said, gesturing to Naruto, whose hand was tapping the hilt of her chikuto while the other was in the closest pouch on her waist. She nodded, grabbing the carved and hollowed elk horn before blowing into it, causing the sound to echo through Terra. Arena, you have one last chance to give up now, outsider, before you get hurt, the man said, standing in front of Naruto, who sighed. Of course, like a mutt, it's the smallest dog who barks the loudest. Well, Pooch, since I've seen your bark, she started before vanishing out of everyone's sight until he looked down to see her crouching when she swept his legs from under him when she kicked him into the air while waiting for him to come down. Let me show you my bite, she finished when she punched him in the chest, launching him across the arena and into the water halfway in before he started to submerge. Winner Naruto, Kaya announced, getting a couple of cheers mixed in with boos from those who were against Naruto's participation when she got in her boat and joined the rest of the fighters, thinking unaware Kaya was thinking the same. One fighter down, another 11 to go. Short time skip as the fights continued. Naruto could only watch on in boredom as they hardly had any training past the basics comparable to her world. The only thing she knew since her time spent with Kaya was that they were hunters as well and mainly focused on attacking from afar while fighting up close unless they had no choice. The fact that she got her opponent's feet from under him before he could react was obvious. After the 6-round fights were over, the people remaining were 6 people, including Naruto, 2 women and 3 men. And the more she stuck around, she faced more animosity amongst the other Terra dwellers, save for Kaya and her mother, whose name she learned was Lebro. Naruto was currently inspecting her weapons, which still consisted of her 2 swords and her 2 sets of onyx tri-pronged kunai with a wood handle with some seals written on the handle. She could hear the remaining 5 fighters' plan on how to get rid of her, and to be honest, she was ready for whatever they had to throw at her. But while they planned, Naruto sat on the edge of the stands talking to Kaya after receiving a hug from her father and mother while Jacob gave her the scroll for her destined car, as he liked to call it, saying every map he owned was to a car that fit their driver's personality. With Naruto and Kaya, so Naruto, who do you think you're going to fight with as a partner? Kaya asked, sitting on the wall with Naruto next to her. She shrugged. It doesn't matter really, all 5 of them don't want me here, so I can imagine they're talking down there about how to get rid of me or plan to throw their fights while giving my partner their equipment to win. Raising an eyebrow, Lebro, who was listening in, asked, how do you know that? Pointing towards them, she said, just listen to them. I may not completely know your language, but thanks to Kaya I got the basics down and I know they are plotting to remove me from the fights. Both Kaya and Lebro listened to the small group's conversation. The woman, who was her age, said, so it's agreed that during this round we remove the filth from the tournament by attacking her all at once. The last of the 3 women said, yes, besides I doubt Her Majesty will mind. We are just trying to purify the once holy ceremony like it was before this child came along. To say the least, both women were appalled when Lebro was going to attack them. Naruto said, please save your breath, they aren't worth it. But what they're planning is forbidden, Kaya hissed before Naruto kissed her hand, making her stop. I agree, Naruto, they have to face some repercussion, Lebro said, watching Naruto tilt her head while noticing her whisker marks made her look very much like a fox. Since they intend on just attacking me during this round anyway, why not let them do it without being all sneaky? Besides, she started taking off her headband, showing her eyes. I want to show them why they shouldn't bare their fangs at an alpha, she finished when her pupils narrowed as her fangs became visible. Lebro nodded, saying, "Okay Naruto, I'll go along with it, I just hope you know what you're doing." Grinning, she said, "Ah, after so many years you've known me, you have yet to learn how I tick." Kaya nudged her, saying, "That's because she doesn't know you quite like I do. Also, did you hear about the destroyed buildings?" Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I went down to the site a month ago to see some wrecked machines with Kane's logo under the buildings. Seems the king has decided to grace his subjects with his presence." They nodded when Lebro said, "It's time you join them, Naruto, and good luck, those 5 are some of Terra's strongest." Nodding, she said, "I understand, Lebro, but do know I have the skills of my old life, who was trained to be a soldier. Since she was able to walk, I was already holding weapons and striking with precision." Jumping down after kissing Kaya's hand again, she rejoined the others while Lebro turned to her eyebrow. "Yes, mother, it's true, she, like many children in her world, were trained to be killers. She's taken her fair share of lives back then, she even fought in a war before she was brought here," Kaya said, sensing her mother's thoughts, making the women go wide-eyed before grinning. "Oh yes Kaya, you're going to give me some healthy grandbabies to spoil," she said, grinning, ignoring the fact her daughter had her face buried in her hands, trying to become invisible before turning her attention to the fighters. With the 6 fighters, they were standing on the landmass in their groups. Although Naruto's eyes were still closed as she had her arms crossed, the 5 fighters watched her with slight hesitation, as she no longer seemed like a child but a trained killer, making them slightly hesitant. As the fighters continued to watch her, they heard Lebro announce, "Fighters, it is time for the next round." The crowd cheered until she raised her hand as she continued, "But, to give things a new turn, this will be a free-for-all battle where the winner will claim the hand of my daughter." The crowd, nor did the fighters save for Naruto, didn't know how to react, although Naruto smirked as the crowd got into it, while the 5 fighters started to feel cocky, possibly thinking she would lose with it being 5-on-1. When the horn went off, the 2 women and men fired off several arrows. Cutting down the arrows while dodging the ones she was unable to cut away, she quickly brought her Red Queen from her back and blocked the attack from behind as she slowly looked behind her, while opening her eyes, making the man back off. What are you?" he asked as her eyes narrowed again, making him flinch as she turned her attention to the group in front of her, causing them to do the same. "Me? Well, I'm Naruto. N.S. Devlin, daughter of Babs and Duke Devlin, but you can call me the Demon of Motorcity," she said with a fanged grin as she charged at the first 4, knocking the first 2 unconscious. Turning to the one she missed, she was cut across the nose with an arrow when she took her kunai and threw it between the 2 when she flipped over one and kicked him in the back of the head, knocking him out. Hearing a loud whistle, she turned her head to see a wide volley of arrows as they buried themselves into her as she fell back on her back. Kaya was shocked as she was about to cry out until she exploded into a burst of smoke to reveal what they hit was a small log with her top on it, as a black flash appeared between the 2 remaining fighters, which she incapacitated with a strong blow to the stomach for both of them, causing them to collapse. The crowd was wide-eyed with what she did, as she not only teleported but also somehow replaced herself with a log. Raising her arm, Lebro shouted, "Winner Naruto. N.S. Devlin." All the Terra dwellers cheered, with Kaya being the loudest, as she even jumped up and down clapping as Naruto smiled at her while drifting in her boat, as she soon joined Kaya up on the stand, giving the winner a celebratory kiss. When she withdrew her kiss, Naruto had a struck stupid look on her face, which Kaya had to giggle at, while dragging her to the chambers where the bonding is done. Rolling her eyes, Lebro said, "The ceremony is now over, as the bonding ceremony will now commence." With her piece said, she followed after the 2 lovebirds, while Babs said, "Lebro, we're going to give them their space, since I still remember you and Keys went through your bonding ceremony." Blushing, she said, trying to defend herself, "Ah, we weren't that bad." Duke, Babs and Jacob could only deadpan at the leader as Jacob said, "Really? Why do you think I made those rooms soundproof from the inside out? You 2 went at it like wild animals." She could only drop her head in embarrassment as she walked away while tossing them the bird, making the 3 laugh, while she quickly ran after the 2 soon-to-be newlyweds. Duke could only watch them from afar before asking, "So, how soon do you think we can expect to have grandchildren?" "I want to bet a couple years after this all happens." Jacob said, pulling out a couple $100 when Babs whacked them both in the back of their heads. I can't believe you two are betting on my daughter's love life. I bet sooner, she said, pulling $200 out of her pocket, making the two men stare at her. What, just because I whacked you doesn't mean I don't want to make money, she defended, getting a shrug from the two men before getting in their respective rides and drove away. Bonding chamber. The chamber was rather for a better world mystic, as she felt the natural energy flow through the room in waves as Naruto and Kaya stood in the center of a stone chamber room with several carvings and paintings, with them standing on a marble carved floor. Looking at Kaya, Naruto could see the anticipation as she shifted her weight from foot to foot, making Naruto asked, "Is everything all right?" Nodding, she smiled with a bit of nervousness in her system. She said, "I'm fine. It's just Mom always told me about the bonding ceremony, with how the two go through a marking where the two are further bound by their souls interconnecting. She said it was all one beautiful experience." Smiling, she took Kaya's hand, saying, "Sounds like it, and I'll make sure this is as beautiful for you as she said it was for her." "I would surely hope so," they heard, causing them to turn their attention to Kaya's mother walking in with some green ink similar to the green markings on the others in Terra. "Now Naruto, I'm sure you've seen the others in Terra like me with these green markings, correct?" Lebro asked, getting a nod. "Excellent. These markings are the sign of two souls being bound in an eternal connection not even death can break. Now I need you two to strip to your underwear so I can apply the paint." The two looked at each other before blushing. They've made out before but never gone as far as to see one another naked or remotely close, besides Kaya, who saw her in her sleep clothes last night. Naruto, like before, was in a pair of girls' boxers and a black sports bra. Nodding, Lebro said while lighting some incense, "Now I want the two of you to sit in front of each other while taking deep breaths as you hold the other's hands while staring into the other's eyes." Doing so, Lebro proceeded to begin painting the markings on the two, letting her hands move on their own as they began to form, giving a flame-like pattern instead of the usual broad lines like everyone else's. While this was happening, Naruto and Kaya felt their bodies grow hotter as they actually felt the other's heartbeat through their chests, making the two pant with a blush on their cheeks as their chests heaved from the incense. Finishing, she put out the incense while watching the two newlyweds continue to stare into each other's eyes as Kaya's brown eyes flashed red for a second before gaining slits where her pupils were originally. Nodding to herself, she said while tossing what remained of Naruto's shirt to her, knocking the two of them out of their trance, allowing them to get their clothes back on. "All right, you two, the process is finished. Now let's get you two somewhere comfortable for the evening." The two got dressed while following her through a back door of the chamber room as Naruto asked, still feeling that unquenchable heat in her chest, "Somewhere comfortable? Why do we gotta get comfortable?" Kaya nodded while unable to keep her eyes off Naruto, feeling her body burn as they walked deep into the forest of Terra until they saw a large house. "Now head on inside and I'll see you two in a week," Lebro said, pushing the two of them in the room when she locked it from the outside while keeping the key. Inside the house, much to Naruto's surprise and Kaya's curiosity, they could only examine the room as it wasn't a huge house but more so one of those hotels, or at least styled like one. There was a large bed bigger than a king with some rather expensive looking sheets and a multitude of pillows, with a mini fridge and a large flat screen television in the wall. Along with that was a love seat that the television, and a kitchen with a fully stocked fridge and functioning oven. Bathroom was large as well, with a walk-in shower and a tub next to it, as they raised an eyebrow while Naruto said, "So, we're in here for a week. What are we supposed to do in here for a week besides watch TV?" Feeling her body grow hotter, she took her shirt off again while tossing it aside. "God, it's so hot in here." Kaya wasn't faring any better as she was sitting on the bed by the mini fridge when she saw a note. "Naruto, come look at this," she said, making her husband, wife, come over. Seeing the note as Kaya read, "Welcome to the newlywed couple Kaya and Naruto. As part of the ceremony, you two will stay in here for a week and everything will be handled. Inside are 2 drinks that will help you with your heat situation. Please do drink and enjoy yourselves. Signed, Lebro Fang." Inside the fridge was 2 small plastic bottles, each with their names on them, as the two drank it with a bit of resentment from the taste. Whatever that was, I don't think I'll be too insistent in drinking another," she said, with Kaya agreeing when she reached for a remote while pulling Naruto along before she pushed her into the love seat while sitting on Naruto's lap. Wrapping her arms around Kaya's waist, pulling her in closer, something neither seemed to mind, Naruto brought her face closer to Kaya's neck while watching an old movie before the world went to hell called Nightmare on Elm Street. Even though it was old, it was still pretty good for a scare, which proved truthful as Kaya jumped every now and again, or hiding in her chest, which had Naruko feel mixed in this situation. A part of her loved holding her wife like this, while another part of her felt every touch and subtle caress of Kaya's fingers when she rubbed Naruko's arms, feeling as if electricity flowed through her, making the heat return, hitting the two of them harder. Kaya, who had her face in Naruko's chest, couldn't help but lightly shake as the heat coursed through her as her mind became hazy. While looking up, she saw Naruko look down at her before Kaya adjusted herself to where she straddled Naruko's waist before kissing her. The growing frustration from the heat they were experiencing grew the longer their lips remained connected as Naruko growled into the kiss as she lifted Kaya princess style before tossing her on the bed. Sitting up, Kaya could only get so far as Naruko hovered over her with her chest heaving much like her own. "And Naruko," Kaya said, leaning up as they kissed with the movie forgotten as Naruko lay on top of her kissing. Removing her fangs, a mark of a wolf's head was seen as the two collapsed in the bed in each other's arms, basking in the glow of what they've done as Kaya was curled into her with Naruko's arms wrapped around her. That felt better than I could ever imagine, though my ass and pelvis hurts, I could adjust," she said, turning in her hold as she wrapped her arms around Naruko's neck with her leg draped over the others. Giggling, Naruko said, kissing Kaya on her forehead. "Sorry," was all she said, getting a smirk in return. "It's fine, but we're going to have to practice to get used to it all, huh?" she said with a seductive grin as Naruko rolled her eyes before returning the grin. "Seductive minx," she said, yawning as the two fell asleep in each other's arms with a smile. Timeskip 1 week overview. During the entire week, it was safe to say the events were interesting to say the least, as Naruko suspected Kaya had indeed developed a chakra network with rather large reserves, almost as much as her old friend Kurama. And then when they woke up after their first night as a couple, when Naruko marked her, she ended up becoming a half-demon, which Kaya didn't seem to mind, although she had to adjust to the increase in sensitivity to her increased senses. Like the light and sound. Another thing, they worked when they weren't going at it like rabbits in heat, which for both of them after the bonding and the marking was pretty accurate, save for them being wolves, foxes instead of rabbits. They were spending time trying to figure out the map Jacob gave them was a blurred out map of Motorcity, although Kaya found a spare map with the exact markings that were on the map they were given. And while they weren't working on the map, they agreed to work on Kaya's control in her Yukai and chakra, as well as working on her physical abilities. Since she now had a chakra network, she could now afford to learn Fuinjutsu, which she thoroughly enjoyed the art, although she hated the fact that Naruko got her wearing seals that made her body heavier and made it harder to move, but would further appreciate the benefits since she's become more physically fit and stronger. Nonetheless, Naruko and Kaya spent the remaining week to enjoy their time together, be it just training or enjoying the physical pleasures of their love. Inside the home. Kaya, if you keep doing this, we won't be leaving this bed," Naruko said, moaning as Kaya continued to kiss and suck on her neck as her ears and tails were spread out on the bed. "I can't help myself, Naruko," Kaya moaned as she hovered her. As the most notable changes to her was Kaya now sported 10 flowing tails that were a toxic green color like her hair, which also had a blood red streak in it, while Kaya's eyes were now heterochromatic, with the left being a toxic green with honey brown flecks flowing in it, while the right was a dark red like a fine Chardonnay. Smirking, she wrapped her arms around Kaya's waist as she pulled her down, with one hand reaching for her tails while the other hand was combing through her hair, getting a moan as they kissed. Unaware of the intruder, they heard, "Ah, that's such a wonderful sight to behold. And it seems you two thoroughly enjoyed yourselves for the week, but if you want the room for a couple more hours, I can wait outside." Mother," Kaya said, alarmed as she sat up with her tails covering her chest with her tails, while Naruko sat up doing the same while using her other tail to grab their bandages, since neither were wearing bras when they were brought here. As Naruko was about to bind her chest, Kaya threw a bag of clothes on the bed. "Babs was kind enough to drop off some clothes for you and Kaya, since those are probably pretty dirty. She even put some thought into your clothes, Kaya," she said as the two relented as they went into the bathroom with their clothes as they showered and came back out. Naruko was now wearing a black single-sleeve turtleneck with tight black vinyl jeans and boots, with her hair done in a ponytail. Kaya was wearing a black leather miniskirt with a pair of shorts on underneath, with a brown shirt and green top with a fur pelt just like her mother's. "There now, Naruko, what are you and Kaya going to do?" Lebro asked, sitting on the recliner with an questioning look. "Kaya and I were going to check out where Jacob got us, looking for that car. Why it's out in the no man's land near that dangerous ramp is beyond me," she said as a forethought, with Kaya nodding, grabbing the map. I'm more curious about how Jacob has knowledge of the cars, but he's never gotten them himself, Kaya said, marking the map with the car's location. Maybe he grabbed them because he already has one and wants others to have their means of transportation? Lebro proposed, getting a shrug from the two as she got up, saying. Well, I better be getting back. Babs and I were about to have our girls' night, she said, waving to the happy couple as she walked out the house. We better get a move on, it gets dark early this time of year, Kaya said, running out the home with Naruto following close behind. In the dead lands of Motorcity, remind me to kick Jacob in his soft spot for sending us to the middle of nowhere, Kaya said, getting a nod from Naruto as she scanned the area, looking around. Not if I do it first. I mean, he could have at least included some kind of marker or noticeable landmark, but instead Naruto started to rant until she took a step, causing the ground to groan under her, making her halt. Naruto? Kaya started feeling the ground starting to. Yeah, Naruto said, looking over with a blank face, which Kaya returned. I think I might just kill Jacob, Kaya said when they fell through the floor, followed by a series of grunts and slurs from the two. When Naruto shouted, Jacob, when I get out of here your ass is mine. Back at Jacob's shop, he heard Naruto's threat, making him close the shop for a bit, shaking. Think I fell on my head, and what fell on me? Naruto groaned, sitting up to see Kaya's ass in her face, getting shrugged, biting it, making her jump up, glaring at Naruto while rubbing where she bit. What, want me to kiss it better? She said with a grin, only to receive a wide-eyed look as Kaya pointed behind her. What? See something, Ka? Yeah, she said, looking in where Kaya pointed to see what looked like a semi-well-maintained Lamborghini Veneno. I think from the looks of that car Jacob was right on target with the personality, Kaya suggested, getting a nod from Naruto, who was inspecting it with her knowledge from her father-daughter bonding as they would work on cars together. I would believe so, and it seems through the years of negligence it would take some time before Bahamut here would be considered road-ready, not to mention the adjustments to the use of weapons. Naruto said, looking the car over before a thought came to Naruto. Kaya, she said, looking up. What? She responded, wondering why Naruto was staring from where they've fallen from. How are we going to get this thing out of here? Naruto asked, making her pause, looking around for a possible exit, only finding none. Fuck, Naruto exclaimed when they realized neither packed any spare Fuinjutsu scrolls. Yes, this was another miraculous day in Naruto's wonderful life in Motorcity. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.